So, ladies and gentlemen, back here, Interview Sunday, and I'm very, very happy to feature an interview with a guy that I really, really like because I think he has one of the coolest hairstyles ever, somewhere between Howard Stern and Weird Al, and it's just cool. Second of
I
all,
usually
because I
get
like his
Darlene from
main band.
Roseanne.
Huh?
I usually get Darlene from Roseanne. Just
Oh,
kidding.
yeah, Melissa Gilbert. True. But I think you rock it much more than she does. Second of all, because
You're
I
a
like all the
charmer.
bands that he's in. And we already featured him this year. So I'm very, very happy to have Dylan from Bellwitch and now Pyrkagion here with us. So thanks for joining us once more.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Happy to be
It's
here.
always a pleasure, my friend. First of all, the usual question here on Veil of Sound. What is the band merch you're wearing today?
This is a long sleeve shirt from Fuoco Fatuo, who a doom, maybe kind of a black metal, death metal, funeral doom sort of mash from a band from Italy that Bellwitch just finished a European tour with, and they were wonderful. And watching them every night was exhilarating.
They were the supporting act, right? It was not a double headliner. It was you headlining and they were opening, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the Antwerp concert, although I was only like an hour away, but we had just arrived in our holiday destination. I was just too tired to drive.
Yeah. No
So,
problem.
but anyway, Fuoco Fatuo, a very cool band. Very cool
Very cool
band.
band.
If anybody asks today, fortunately nobody can see, but I'm wearing a pluck of Veil of Sound once in a while. I used to wear that at school, and so I just came home a few hours ago and I didn't change since then. So once in a while, that's something that I can wear to school and nobody gives a damn. Nobody is killed on the shirt, nothing. That's something that I can wear. So Dylan, Pyrkagion. First of all, does it have a meaning? Does the name have a meaning? Because I looked it up. I found a few things. Some were connected to pyro, something like fire. But does
Sure.
it have a meaning?
Yes, I think the idea would be like I think a direct translation from Greek would be wildfire.
Ah,
Um,
that
uh,
makes
so
sense because I got a lot of how to act in certain emergency situations in
yes,
Greek.
yes, and I think that the fires that just happened there this past summer was a really unfortunate thing on many levels, but especially for the people who were affected by that. The name was not a reference to that incident, but yeah, I think the theme of the band is kind of looking towards Mediterranean, Middle East, um, ancient things from that area, um, with a theme of fire, and as you mentioned about the like an apocalyptic, an apocalypse through fire of sorts.
So to clear it up, Dylan and I already spoke a few minutes before we started recording, and we spoke about the title of a record, the Pyrkagion and the Unending Fire. When you look at the word Pyrkagion, there are multiple explanations to it, and one of them is that it is like a religious connotation where people say like, okay, the Pyrkagion is connected to the apocalypse, and of course, therefore, it's connected to the coming of the Antichrist and stuff like that. So somebody who is preceding or coming before the end of time. Then, of course, the question is, when we look at all those things, when we talk about Southeastern or Near Eastern, Southern European and Near Eastern ways of thinking, is that something that strikes you? I know that you're a highly philosophical person who thinks about a lot of things. We've had that in our last interview, but is that something where you say like, okay, I'm really interested in that?
Yeah, I am really interested in that. So lately I've been questioning myself why I focus so much on like Western things. I think I don't know, I think I always have. Part of that might be growing up in a Western culture, makes it easier to want to look back at Western things before, you know, I know the things that are happening now. But that's probably a lot of it. I want to start looking in other directions, like
Of course.
in like ancient African things or
Mhm.
ancient like East Asia things and North American, South American things. Like those are so interesting. And there's also a limited in the Western tradition of books and you know studies of such. In that fashion, there's less information on that because the conquistadors and the colonizers of all sorts just wiped everything out. There's so much was lost. So the information in that direction is limited, but what is there is fucking mind blowing in contrast with the world that we live in today. I think there's I mean, it's fascinating to think about like how different people can be. We all have the same brain. We all have, you know, we're built the same way. We pretty much we do the same things, but we do them so differently sometimes, and with such a different twist that uh, it's fascinating.
Is it also the fascination of seeing how a different environment can completely change your fundamental mindset?
Absolutely, absolutely. And like the different like historical aspects that shape the way people act in the present and the way that people plan for the future and the way that that all comes together. I mean, there's it's an endless well of fascinating things.
You've already mentioned the conquistadors, who always proclaimed that what they were doing, conquering countries, raping women, killing children, and all that horrible stuff that they did, that all of that was done to fulfill the will of God, that they were following orders from the Pope, from a Catholic institution. Is that also something where you say, okay, we see how much religion plays into our mindset? In this
Yeah,
case, a
definitely.
monotheist religion, but if we look at the other religions, very often a polytheist kind of religion.
Sure, sure. And I think that raises an interesting question of what is religion and what is political. Because I would,
Mhm.
I mean, like obviously the institution they were proclaiming was a religious institution, the Catholic Church. Um, I would make the argument, not that I'm trying to defend the Catholic Church by any means, they don't deserve it, but I'd make the argument that those people were actually just venture capitalists out there trying to get themselves rich, and they had
Yeah,
this real easy excuse of saying, "Well, this is for the will of God.
yeah,
This is what God wants us to do. The Pope said so," and the Pope, you know, the Pope's in on it too. Pope's like, "Yeah, we're getting money from these guys. Yeah, go do what you got to do. I'm not. You're gonna take my advice, sure. I say go do it."
yeah.
I think those are all just as an example of venture capitalism that we still have today of pieces of shit that are going around fucking up people's lives and
Mm.
ways of life that somehow they're able to do, which is in a you know historical injustice that has never uh hasn't stopped.
Yeah, that hasn't stopped. At the same time, we also, of course, have to agree on the fact that, as interesting as a lot of those other religions are, like the Aztec or Mayan or Inca
Yeah.
religions, those were also not the role models for a lot of things, because I'm not sure whether it was the Mayas or the Aztec. I think it was the Aztec, who basically killed so many people for religious sacrifice. You know, I sometimes wonder whether Marx was not right when saying, like, okay, religion is nothing more than opium for the masses. I know he didn't say it
Right.
like that, but, you know, cutting it short. Um, However, we have to say that the way that a lot of religions and also a lot of mindsets are working, a lot of them, and here I think it's not only a question of monotheism versus polytheism, it's a question of ruling versus ruled, right? Because when you look at the Pyrkagion in religion, he seems to be like one of those few who denies ruling or be ruled. He's just the one who ignites Armageddon, and then everything falls into pieces. But what struck me about the idea of a Pyrkagion in the title of your record is the one who prolongs things, the one who procrastinates in a way, who keeps time going. I don't want to say time is the only thing that matters, because it's not. But do you think that time is one of those few really most important things we have for ourselves, for our society, for our families?
Sure. That's a awesome question. Yeah, because the way that we perceive everything is through the lens of time. Like it's almost like our eyes see everything in the third dimension, space, but our minds perceive everything in the fourth dimension, like through time. So we're always kind of gauging what our next move is. Like if I scroll through social media, these little stupid ads pop up that are trying to tell me to buy houses or save money or whatever the hell. And that's like an example of, that's like the fourth dimension. Those things are saying, plan ahead. They're never saying, what did you do 5 years ago? But that would kind of be the same idea, I suppose. So I guess in that regard, time, like we could say that time is our perception of the world through time would kind of be our capacity for suffering, in a sense. Like all the things, that the good and the bad that happen to us are through the lens of time, because without that, nothing would hurt, nothing would feel good either. It's just like consciousness is based in that. So in some regard, I think we could say time is something of what people use the word God to explain. Maybe something of what people use the word that people use the character the devil to explain. And I guess if we're talking about the devil, we're talking about polytheism, because I'm just getting sidetracked. Sorry.
No, we could also be talking about monotheism, because remember, a lot of the things that we're taught by all our monotheist religions wouldn't be possible without a Luciferian position, right? But I know what you mean. However, something struck me when you spoke about our perception. I think, and I would like your opinion on that, I think that time is the only constant part of our memory. Because I totally remember who I sat next to on my first day at secondary school, but for the life of me, I couldn't describe the classroom. But I have that moment in time, and I know for 100% that Marcus was sitting on my right side. So I think that in a way, time is the only constant part of our memory.
Maybe of our consciousness, even. Like if we take time away, if somehow we couldn't perceive that like fourth dimension, if we couldn't perceive time, what would we be? We'd be like, I don't know, a floating object with no history or future. I mean, I don't even
know birth and no death.
Yeah, I don't even know how to like wrap my head around that. That's too much. But yeah, it's like that, put time into it, and all of a sudden that's how we can operate as whatever we are, the beings, or like, is there a birth and a death? Like, I'm just looking out my kitchen window and there's like a little patch of dandelions out there, and I think like, well, the birth and death of a dandelion comes in spring and it ends at the end of the summer when they all turn white and blow away. But they come back the next year just the same. Maybe not the exact same way. Maybe every dandelion is its own little snowflake, but it's essentially the same thing. And I think we could say that same thing about humanity or any living creature. And maybe someday dandelions will cease to exist. Maybe someday humans will. Maybe someday the earth will, et cetera, et cetera. But like the stuff that all these parts that we are is made of, I don't think those atoms are going to cease to exist at any point in time. I suppose they will. All particles.
No, matter
away, right?
never ceases to exist. It just changes shapes. All matter on Earth is the same.
Ever.
As far as I remember, yes.
Yeah, but like
the atoms change their shapes. The atoms change. The atoms, as far as I remember, and if I understood that correctly in philosophy class like 25 years ago, I think the atoms can recombine, but the amount of atoms on Earth is always the same.
Yes. But don't atoms have like a half-life?
I don't think they do. That's okay. That's why quantum physics can claim that quantum physics exists without space and time.
Okay. Well, okay, so that works much better than for this little, a trajectory that I'm on. If everything just kind of keeps dying off and recreating it in a different way, there isn't really a fourth dimension to it. It's kind of just floating around, like it's not necessarily affected by time. If you look at it through the lens of time, it has like you could take like little photographic segments and say, oh, there was this series of giant lizards on Earth for a period of time. They're mostly all gone now.
They were all called Jesus lizards.
Jesus lizards, exactly. Would that be monotheistic?
No, that would be Yoish.
Yoish.
Nice. Like David Yow.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I
we're
guess
basically
like
in a loop, right?
Yeah. I've gone so far into this loop that I forgot what the original question was.
No, I think we're very, very, very close to what we were thinking about, because I a few months ago I read something that people who are concerned about our DNA and who try to decipher our DNA have found out that there seems to be a part of our DNA which has like an overarching, overgenerational kind of memory, which, for example, explains why a lot of people in a few Eastern European countries still feel as if they are always ruled by let's say a communist government, a government which doesn't work for them. Although those are people who have never lived under communist rule, they still have that feeling. And then the question is, well, why do they have that feeling? And one of the explanations that I found in one of those articles was that there seems to be some kind of overarching hereditary memory that we are given by our ancestors. And that then we're back in that loop thing, right? So, memory, our personal memory exists in the frame of time, but the overarching memory of mankind is timeless because it's a loop. We're gone way off things. But maybe we can come back to the record, because there is something very cool about the record. And I have to ask a question that I encountered when I was reading through the promos that we got for it. And I sometimes love the promos that we get, and sometimes I wonder if a person has ever listened to the record. In your case, there was one thing that I really think is a good question, because it said that one of these ignition points for Pyrkagion was that you guys, Zach and you, were missing something in modern black metal. Is that true? That you said like, okay, we need this in black metal?
I think I think to an extent. I think I know what you're saying, and I think that I would have worded that differently, but I think I know what Zach meant, and I agree with him. And I think for me personally, the way that that statement sits and the way that I think a lot of times with any artistic medium, things kind of become of each other. They kind of all start to sound or look or present alike, and there's too much consistency, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that in the grand scheme of things. For my personal taste, I would say too much. It is too much sometimes. And in this case, I think there's a lot of black metal bands that sound alike. We were trying to make, like, I don't know, make it weirder, make it more unique, challenge ourselves to take, like, okay, what is this broad outline that makes up black metal? We, of our personal taste, which bands in this category of music are making things that we like? How would we recreate that ourselves? And yeah, I think that he and I are both bassists. Like he played bass, he plays bass. And Hissing was a band that he's played with a lot, put a lot of records out. I do Bellwitch. We were like, let's start a band where we're both playing guitar, just to, when we're trying to make this thing that we're going to try to make, give a different feel from what is the common saturation of black metal. Let's do it with different instruments so that it's just harder for us to fall in line and do it the way that it seems natural and that is easy to do. We want to make it kind of more of a challenge in that regard. So we both had to learn how to play guitar, which has had mixed results, but it's been a lot of fun regardless. And it's been it's been challenging. It's been I think I've grown as a musician learning to do the guitar. Yeah, there's a whole new set of challenges to a new instrument. It's so similar to a bass, but it's so different in the same way.
Did you also have to change the way you wrote songs or you write songs?
It was a different approach. I don't Zach is much more accustomed to, Zach wrote the outlines for the songs. He's much more accustomed to writing things with outlandish time signatures or strange repetitions or structures that are very different than how I would do it, which was challenging. And sometimes it was hard to catch on to what he was doing. But I've played in plenty of bands historically that have done that also. So it wasn't recreating the wheel by any means. It was fun. It was challenging. It made me maybe think about the way melodies can be extended or drawn out or cut short, and like looking at, like, let's say something that's in 7. I think my mind, when I hear something in 7, I want it to be an 8. Like I want it to be 6-8. So I start to try to do that, but it's always off a little bit. Like it comes off as irregular to my internal clock just because I'm so used to playing things in 4 and 8. So then I'll have to give attention to how is it's a little shorter than what I want it to be, and how was that approached, and what is the feeling of that? What does that irregularity convey, and how do I work within that language or method or whatever the word is for that? So in that regard, yes, it's new instrument, new musical crew to play with. It's very challenging. And then there's Brennan, who is a fucking monster drummer, who showed up and just played it like it was no big deal. Brennan just sat down and like, okay, and just blasted through everything. I was like, oh my god.
By the way, short question. How did it feel to finally perform pop songs of only 18 minutes length?
Oh, pop songs. Yeah, yeah. That was great. Piece of cake. 18 minutes. I was like, oh, finally got to shave off about 62 minutes of this.
But honestly, I mean, like, again, you are in a band which does long tracks, right? But of course, there is probably a clear difference, right? Whether
Yeah.
you have like an 85-minute song or two 18-minute blasts.
Yeah, I mean, still 18 minutes is still
It's
when
still
things
long. It's not radio
yeah,
formatting.
when things are going in 13 and 7 and then 6 and double 6 and back to 4 then to 5. It's a lot to remember. Whereas I think to contrast that with Bellwitch, whereas Bellwitch is there's a lot going on too, and we're dragging things out, and maybe each rotation of, I think like in rock and roll, a lot of times it's a rotation of 4, and it'll change the next thing. Bellwitch does that too. Each rotation, each of those 4 is going to be timed a little differently. So the third one might be drawn out extra long. The second one might be a little quick. With Pyrkagion, it might be a rotation of 5 followed by 2 7s into an 8, and then it just goes on to something completely different. I mean, in the US we have this phrase tomato tomato, kind of just saying like it's the same thing, maybe said just a little differently. So I guess in that regard, tomato tomato, but it's a challenging tomato and a fun tomato.
I can expect that one. Also something that struck me, I mean, like with Pyrkagion, there is so much going on in those 18 minutes. For which band did you have to learn more parts? For Pyrkagion's, what is it, 35 minutes or something like that? Both tracks combined, or for Bellwitch's 85 Monsters?
I don't know. I guess I would say short answer, Pyrkagion, because Zach gave me the skeleton material. He was like, here's the outline, learn this, right to it. Whereas with Bellwitch was mostly composed, the skeleton was mostly composed by me before I brought it to Jesse and said, okay, now let's expand on this. So learning the material, definitely Pyrkagion. But Bellwitch is just that was kind of writing 3 albums at the same time. So in that regard, I think Bellwitch might be more, but
I mean, like, if you change, as you change your instrument, of course, but also, I'm very sure, change the perspective on songs a little bit. Is that something that by now, as you now have done that, where you would say like, okay, that is something that I think is important to keep the flame of interest going and growing?
I'm sorry.
You now change your perspective on how to write music. Do you say something like, okay, that is something that I might need in the future more often in order to keep that flame burning, that creative flame, so to speak?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, learning a new instrument, and looking at all these, at like a different, compositional approach is definitely enriching in the overall experience. And I think it definitely did make me grow as a musician and as a performer, as a writer, as a listener. Yeah, I think variety is such a big deal, and having different perspectives is always enriching, and it makes everything it doesn't water anything down. I think that variety definitely makes everything more potent, and it makes everything, it gives a broader set of tools to see things with, to approach things with.
I mean, like, I know that with Bellwitch, you are already working on the next part of Future Shadow, of a trilogy. And I don't want to ask the following in connection to that, because I'm pretty sure that the next two Bellwitch records will not have a guitar. But could you imagine incorporating guitar lines into the Bellwitch sound?
With Stygian Bow, definitely, which was kind
Yes.
of a
Okay, go
fun
on.
thing. And with that, in the same direction, the way Eric plays guitar is so different than like the way a Bellwitch, the Bellwitch songs were just structured around bass. And like
Yeah.
there's the rhythm line with my left hand, and there's the lead line with my right hand. And incorporating that bass, I'm sorry, incorporating Eric's guitar, we all had to stop a couple times and be like, whoa, what's happening? And I was like, okay, we both have to bend a little bit to each other, but there's something really cool that happens in that bend. And then I think I start to understand how he approaches things, and he understands how I approach things. And we kind of, I think as that band continues to grow, that'll become, well, he and I will become more fluid in that regard. And I think the same could be applied to Pyrkagion, the way that Zach writes things, the way that I write things, the way we approach those things. Well, as we meet each other to make everything make everything work. That blending of ideas and styles and intentions will totally have to bend to each other. But I still think that that's not watering down or diluting anything. In a lot of ways, I think that's increasing the potential for greater, for potency, for things to be much more unique and yeah, much more unique.
So to maybe also cut that clear, so for the time being, Bellwitch will always remain a band centered around bass and whatever Jesse behind his crazy kit is going to add to it, right?
Right.
And whenever you feel as if, this needs a guitar, then it would be more something for Stygian Bow, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. The Stygian Bow songs are being written currently. Eric and I are both kind of doing other things, and he's writing them from guitar, and then I'm trying to add bass to that. And that's fun because like with that first Stygian Bow record, a lot of that was a lot of the structure was written by me, whereas that's changing with this next one. A lot of it's written by Eric. Whereas with Pyrkagion, it was pretty much all the structure was all written by Zach. And I don't think I even changed like the timing on anything with Pyrkagion. It was all following the original structure, which was hard. A lot of it was I mean, I think that any musician would say the same. It's a challenge to make different time signatures that are smashed together. It's a challenge to write something that can flow over that, like a 5 to a 7 to an 8, to make something flow over that can be challenging. It can be done, it's no problem. But it's challenging.
So then you now basically have 3 big bands that you're working with or working in.
Yeah, there's some more on the way too. We've been we're trying to make a bunch of them for the record label to put out. There's I won't say too much, but there's 3 more in the work right now. I'm only in two of those, but
only. So then you have 5 bands. So yeah, that's also maybe the last thing that we talk about before we come to the quickfire round. You started your own label for the Pyrkagion release. Why did you not go to, I mean, like, there would have been tons of labels who would have taken you with a big kiss, like.
Well,
Why
I
start
think
your
the
own theme?
idea, Zach and I were, as we were working on the Pyrkagion stuff, it was like, what if, like, because we kept having these other ideas, and it was like, that doesn't fit into this. Like, with what Pyrkagion is, that idea wouldn't fit. It would be parallel, but it doesn't necessarily blend. It would kind of take away from that potency. As that was kind of, as we were coming to realize that, it was like, well, let's just make a label that does cassette, and let's just make a bunch of bands and release all of them differently. And if a larger, more established label with distribution came along and said, "Hey, we want to do a full length record with you," then we'd say, "Okay, great." But if not, that's fine too. Like, we don't necessarily need it. If that's not the big bucks of the industry isn't necessarily the main goal here. But yeah, I think we just kind of decided, let's just make a label that we can release our own things to the world on our own terms. And if those things set roots and grow outwards, then great. If they don't, great. It's no problem.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, because you are a very thoughtful person, and you take your time with answering, but indirectly you're already igniting the sparks of interest, because of course everybody who listens to this, including me, is like, give me more, give me next band, next record. That's a very interesting trick that you do there.
My marketing trick is working, I see. Yeah.
At least with me, it totally does. And I bet there are lots of people who are the same. So, Dylan, first of all, thanks for all the insights into Pyrkagion. But the way the things are done here at Veil of Sound, you don't get around for quickfire round. And I also looked up which questions I gave you for Bellwitch a few months ago, so I don't repeat myself. We've said that, in theology, the Kadishon has to do with the end of times. And of course, when the end of time comes, the 4 apocalyptic riders will come. And I will give you the choice of 2 of those, and you have to decide between war or pestilence.
Oh, shit. I mean, if we're looking at it in a 4th dimensional lens, are they not the same thing?
But for the moment, what would you rather have? War or pestilence?
My evasion techniques didn't work here, did they?
Nope, not this time.
War or pestilence? I guess I think pestilence probably leads to war. War probably leads to pestilence. I don't know, I guess pestilence, because that requires less I have to pick up a gun less fast in that scenario, which sounds more appealing to me.
It's definitely the pacifist answer to that one.
Yeah.
And being German, I of course thought about war in the German term Krieg, and then it dawned on me I could give you 2 old school metal bands, one of them about to release a new record. So you get Neil Jameson's Krieg versus the godmother of all death metal, Death.
Oh, well, I mean, Death, but that is no slight against Krieg, who are great. And I think I heard a new track of that. Was there a track that was released?
Yeah. I think we're already on the second. It's already the second single that is out. And I have to say, I listened to the whole album by now. I really like it, and I really hope that I get Neil on the show, because that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, he's historically putting out great stuff. Like, he's always.
And of course, also looking at it with a little twinkle in the eye, my next 2 questions are, once in a while we also have to have a little fun here on the show. As soon as the apocalypse comes, there will be a lot of fire.
Uh-oh.
Barbecue going on.
Barbecue. We love
How do you
barbecue.
like your barbecue? Gas grill or charcoal grill?
Oh, charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
I come from Kansas City, and this is a big deal out there. This is the personality of Kansas City is barbecue. So I got to be,
Yeah, I've
if there's
heard
anyone
that.
from Kansas City listening to this, they're going to get really mad at me if I say the wrong thing.
I've heard that. I never knew that barbecue was so big in Kansas City. I mean, when I lived in the States, when, you know, in Atlanta, we always thought the coolest barbecue is North Carolina barbecue. But I've heard that Kansas City must be huge. Is that really the case?
Well, in Kansas City, they would say that that perception you had was incorrect. Just kidding.
I always thought Kansas City is only the Chiefs and nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, it's, it's one of those things that like people do make their own sauce, and that's really cool. Like the DIY people that go out there and make it, and they try to like follow this like set of rules. It's really very similar to the way a music genre works. It's pretty cool. There's like regional styles of things. Yeah, I mean, more power to them.
But it's good that you chose charcoal, because then my next question can work. What do you prefer? S'mores or cookies and marshmallows separate?
Oh, how did you know I like candy? Well,
Because
that's a
you're
tough
such a
one.
sweet guy.
Oh, stop it. Okay, that's a tough one because I've been vegan since 2001, and marshmallows have
Sugar in it,
at
which
least
is, yeah.
gelatin, I think, is a weird thing in the marshmallows. So I guess I couldn't really take either one. Oh, there's probably like a vegan marshmallow out there by this point in time.
By now, right?
So
Okay, let's say you get
the
vegan marshmallows.
okay, that regard, s'mores.
Coming back to music, right? Mayhem versus Dark Throne.
Mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
That first album's just
don't ask me
has a
why,
place in my heart.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Also, listening to Pyrkagion, I would have guessed that Mayhem is more the influence on that one. While I was like writing down my questions and stuff, there was always one thing that came to my mind that don't ask me why. I always had that Bad Religion song back in my head, like Change of Ideas, because, you changed your instrument, new set of perspectives, new set of ideas. So I will give you two Bad Religion songs. Change of Ideas from No Control, or American Jesus from Recipe for Hate.
I'm afraid I might not be familiar with either one of them.
So, yeah.
American Jesus sounds interesting.
I know I tell that story too often, but I think I haven't told it here on the show. When I visited my last Belgian hardcore festival in 2017 or 16, Bad Religion was one of the headliners. And we were standing like this. And the guys were going off stage, and everybody knew they'd come back out. And I told my friends, if they now play American Jesus, we'll have 2 meters of space in 20 seconds. And everybody was like, you won't be able to make that. Torsten, no way that's going to happen. And Brian Baker comes out, plays the first few things. And I'm just like, hold it. 20 seconds.
Yeah. What exactly is the American Jesus?
It's, of course, like it's capital criticism or criticism of capitalists, America. Sure. It has this, and it's also very much against the oil industry, because they got the American Jesus. You can see him on the interstate. Like they basically count off all the things that are wrong about the States. Also the perception, a lot of, not you, but a lot of Americans, like there's one line in there where they say like, I don't need to be a global citizen because I'm blessed with nationality. And in one line he's like, I hope that everybody can come here, something like that.
that kind of ties into what we were saying earlier about the conquistadors.
See,
like it's almost the same, like trajectory of the religion, in quotes, that we were talking about. Of it's like not really. There's not really anything religious about it, or theosophical about it. Or spiritual about it. It's about money. So maybe
it's about for one God, but it's a big W, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah.
Two, let's say, black metal adjacent bands from where you're from the region where you're living, the Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
Would you rather listen to Meesmore's version of extreme doom metal or Wolves in the Throne Room atmospheric black metal?
Ooh, tough question. I mean, both are great.
Mm-hmm.
Guess it depends on what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
If I was running, I'd probably rather listen to Wolves in the Throne Room. But if I was trying to repair, if I was trying to put flooring into my house, I'd probably rather listen to Mizmor. I don't know why that's the idea that came to mind, but doing some sort of carpentry work, I feel like I would want to listen to Mizmor with the sort of pummeling, like hard hitting the space. I don't know.
I got two more for you. As you are now an accomplished guitar player, who are you trying to follow? Van Halen's Eddie or Uli Jon Roth?
Oh shit. Well, that's funny because next week my homework is to write a guitar solo for this other record. So baby steps, but that's a fucking tough question because obviously Eddie Van Halen is just like a tornado of notes and approaches, all in like Eruption is just like the fucking quintessential guitar solo. But Uli Jon Roth is an animal. I guess Uli Jon Roth, it's more melodic, less flashy, still flashy, less flashy than Eddie Van Halen though. So I guess I'll take Uli Jon Roth.
And over the course of our interview, I don't know why, but one question came to my mind, as I always try to mix those with premeditated questions and something that blobs up in my head during the interview. I don't know why, but I came up with the alternatives. What do you prefer? The kind of earthy fantasy of the Lord of the Rings, or the scientific stuff that is connected to the Dune world?
Scientific stuff, like you mean like, is this, are you basically saying fantasy or sci-fi?
I think, well, Dune is a little bit of both, right?
Oh, Dune. Right. I thought you said Doom, like Doom.
No. Dune. Herbert's writing, which unfortunately will never be finished.
So Dune, Frank Herbert was from Tacoma, Washington, which is just like,
oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, like 20 minutes north of where I live. I guess I would go with I don't know, that's tough. I think dragons have a slightly annoying film in my mind. Like when I think about a dragon, I'm like, I'm skeptical. I think about alien planets, I feel less skeptical. I think about, like, I mean, I don't know. Essentially, it's like, so the idea between Dune, because I think Dune, being rooted in the sci-fi genre, looks towards the future from the scope of the past, whereas fantasy looks towards the past with the scope of the present.
Oh, that's a wonderful answer.
Somebody would probably say that was incorrect, and I would be interested to hear how, and I would probably agree with him. But I think for the sake of the quick fire round, I think that's my answer. Yeah.
Okay, so
Dune,
folks, when you hear this now that he says, why he chooses which one, and how Tolkien looked at the past, which he invented, from his present, write down in the comments whether you agree with Dylan on that one or not. I might agree with him when I think about, when Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, and yeah. But if you have a different opinion, please write it down in the comments. When you think that comparison between Dune and The Lord of the Rings is just nothing but a bag of shit, also write it in the comments with maybe nicer words. That would be very kind of you. If you like what we do, then give us a link here on YouTube, or if you want to follow us on our socials, on Facebook or on Instagram, that would be cool. If you want to do a little bit more, go to our Patreon, where you can support us for, I think it's $1 or maybe $2, something like that, which would already be cool. And otherwise, Dylan, thanks for your time. Thanks for very cool questions. And whichever shitstorm we get for the Dune and Lord of the Rings comparison, we'll forward that to you. And now is your chance for final last words. So yeah, Dylan, final last words.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the conversation every time, and I'm going to be thinking about this Dune, Lord of the Rings thing all day long now. I think, because the more I think about it, I do think that Lord of the Rings was written looking towards the past from a sense of the present. That doesn't exclude the future, but I think it definitely pushes the future to the side.
There is
historically, it's conserving the balance of the universe, whereas Dune is more like expanding and kind of like, is there, well, maybe Dune's conserving the balance of the universe also.
Looking at Lord of the Rings from an historical point of view, there is an easy answer. You are, in my opinion, correct. Look at the two main antagonists in the Lord of the Rings. You have Saruman and Sauron, right? Two very similar names. And being a German historian, and I know that there are parallels in there. Think of the two main antagonists in World War II on the German side against the British, the English, and against the Americans and all the other cultures. It's Hitler and Himmler.
Oh, interesting. This was not lost on Tolkien.
No, Tolkien, first of all, Tolkien was a veteran of the First World War.
Yeah.
And second, I know that he wrote The Lord of the Rings at the time of World War II. And you can even see some bits that are known to have been written past 1941. You can see some of those things becoming even darker than the first part. So.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
But still, if anybody disagrees, comments. So, Dylan, now every month we do this, right?
I think so, yeah.
So I'm already looking forward to the next record.
As am I.
So enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.